Hi, this is Dr. Yu Taik Lee. Throughout this program, we will discuss how various industries work and explore various opportunities that AI can contribute. The title of this program is Why Operations Matter in the Era of AI. As you all know, we are experiencing dramatic changes how we works in our daily life because of the rapidly evolving AI technology. However, if we do not understand how we work and how various industries operate in the real world, we may not be able to achieve expected goal by adopting AI technology. We experienced similar problem when the new technology were introduced in the past, like personal computer, enterprise resource planning, ERP, management information system, MIS, and so on. Therefore, it is equally important for us to better understand how the real world work as well as understanding the technology itself. This program is consisted of 2 modules and 1 special topic, as you can see from the table. The first module has 4 sub-sessions focusing on discussing process. In the second module, there are 4 sessions focusing on supply chains. At the end of the program, I also added a special topic under the tile of socially responsible supply chains, which is getting more important these days in our global society. Competing on process. This is the first module of the program and session number 1. In this session, we will discuss about today's competitive environment and the basic aspect of the process. What is process? The high level or general definition of the process so that we can get a sense of what the process is about. More importantly, I will discuss why understanding or managing process is important in adopting new technology. In the past, there were some organizations run their business like when the performance is good, the company pay extra bonus to employees, promote them, and happy. But when the performance goes down, those companies complain about the external factors such as oil crisis, financial crisis, or even pandemic crisis. However, if you think about those external factors, your company is not the only one that is affected by those external factors, but everyone. However, why some companies suffer while others flourishing even during the same period? On the other hand, some companies continuously improve their capabilities and performance even during the same period. It is kind of continuous improvement. At the end, those companies were superior than the A type of companies. These days, I think that the competitive environment has become more intense or even dramatic. This is because there are some companies that set the goal very high, sounds like unachievable or even impossible to achieve, but they achieve. Some of you might saw this graph. Netflix took about 3,500 days to be able to acquire 100 million users, and the other innovators has shortened the time to acquire same number of users. More recently, ChatGPT was able to acquire million users when the company announced its service. See, this is the level of competition and the speed of innovation. So, how do we need to compete? Current sliced. Sometimes I was asked to provide a kind of consulting service to a large company. They show me the current situation comparing its competitors and their own company, saying that their company was better, but the competitor catch us up and in the better position. Therefore, we need to improve our performance like this so that we can compete with our competitor. However, I shows the rest of the scenario like follows. First, although you work hard and make some improvement, if we assume that your competitor grows at the same rate, your competitor still will be superior than you, although you make some improvement. Even you make a big improvement at the same rate of your competitor, which would be very difficult. You still cannot reduce the gap if we assume that your competitor will continuously grow at the same rate, which is reasonable assumption. Therefore, you need to make a kind of innovation that will make your performance same as your competitor. If you really want to catch up and be superior than your competitor, then you need to make a big innovation which might be extremely difficult. That is the competitive environment today, from my perspective. So, how do we make that big innovation happens in your organization, or at least an improvement? It is about the process. Process is about converting input into output, even bad or inferior output. That is why we need to understand the process and better manage it. To produce output, we need to have some inputs, such as capital, labor, information, or facilities, including land. By combining and utilizing those input, the process convert those inputs into output. Obviously, Those output could be service or physical goods, including work-in-process goods, which is not the final product, but goods that becomes to a raw material to produce other goods. Even in the individual level, I would say that we are managing our lives by managing our own process, studying, playing sports games, and every activities that we do in our daily lives. Therefore, the process is the basic concept that we need to understand before we trying to adopt new technology. I have an interesting examples here. South Korea has been ranked number 1 according to the annual announcement of the most innovation country ranking for many consecutive years. However, another ranking system, which is Global Innovation Index, evaluated the level of innovativeness of South Korea differently. Its ranking was much lower than Bloomberg ranking, as you can see from the table and the rank for the following years beside. I was curious about why one ranks a country number 1 but another ranks it so differently. I decided to look at the details. One evaluates the innovation level by using inputs such as R&D intensity, while another does based on R&D outcome. Not with the amount of R&D budget that you invested, but with the actual outcome by spending the R&D budget. One evaluates the innovation level based on the patent activity, but another does based on actual income generated from the patents. There is a big difference between the patents that are just registered in the computer system and the patents that are utilized by entrepreneurs to make a specific products or service so that they were able to generate some income. So input-based evaluation versus output-based evaluation is different. Therefore, it is about the conversion or transformation process issue. Although you have many input that can potentially produce innovative outputs, you may not be able to have the expected output if the process is not working properly. Similarly, according to one of my research projects, there is a very interesting result. The research is about looking at the relationship between the change of the population in a specific region and innovation level, which is measured by the number of patents in 4 regions such as Northeast, Midwest, South, and West in the USA in 2 different years. If you look at South region in 2 different years, the populations has grown 2.61%. But the patents number has decreased by 2.40%. On the other hand, if you look at West region, when the population increased by 1.70%, the patent number increased by 14.50%. Although the population cannot be considered as only input that determines the change of the number of patent, it shows a very interesting relationship. In the West region in the USA, you know that there is San Francisco, Silicon Valley, LA, and San Diego, where a lot of entrepreneurs, researchers, and students move in for many reasons. This become an import input to produce the innovation as an output. So, good input and process can make a good output. This graph shows the relationship between input versus output. Let's say the input can be city size or company size, while the output is innovation level, again measured by the patents. As the city size or company size grows, if the output growth is exactly same, it can be a linear relationship. However, if the output increases lower than the rate of input increase, it will be a sublinear relationship. Clearly, as the input grows, if the output grows at the higher rate, it will be a superlinear relationship. Think about yourself. As you invest more time to study, does your GPA increase linearly, sublinearly, or superlinearly? This can be applied any kind of process that has input and output. If you apply this concept to a company, the one that has sublinear may not be able to survive long compared to those company that has a linear relationship. Obviously, the one that has superlinear relationship will be a winner in the competition.
So, we discussed about the competitive environment and process. Process is converting input into output, and the competitiveness can be created depending on how you design and manage the process. So we will explore the process more carefully in the next session.